to Godly Play at Church of the Advent. Today, Miss Celia, Miss Sally, and I, Miss Kim, are going to tell you the story of Jesus and the 12. Let's get ready. For this story, we are going to use this famous painting called The Last Supper. It was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. It is one of the world's most famous paintings. It's in Italy, in a little church. When Jesus went to Jerusalem for the last time, he went with the 12. They were his closest followers, called the disciples. On Thursday of the last week, they met in an upstairs room for their last meal together. It was when Jesus told them that he would always be with them and us when we share the holy bread and wine. But something happened just before he shared the holy bread and wine with them. Jesus said, "Someone who is sitting at this table will betray me." All the disciples were shocked and sorry and angry. They cried out, "Is it I? Who is it?" That is what you see happening in the painting. Later, Judas did betray Jesus. He showed the high priest's soldiers who Jesus was later that night in the Garden of Gethsemane. These are the symbols the church gave the disciples after they began to tell the story and became apostles. Each apostle has a special sign to help us remember them and their stories. Jesus is in the middle. The disciples are in groups of 3 on either side. Let's see who's here. This is John. He is probably the one called the beloved disciple. John first learned about Jesus when he was with John the Baptist. Right away, he told his brother James, and they both began to follow Jesus. Both brothers were fishermen. Their father's name was Zebedee. John is probably the one who wrote down the story of Jesus we call the Gospel of John. This is the symbol for John. On his shield are the cup and the snake. They help us remember how one time some people tried to put poison in John's cup, but the snake came and drank it. The snake died to save John's life. Stories say that John was the only apostle who was not killed. He died on an island when he was an old man, full of years. Next, this is Peter. Peter is leaning in toward Jesus, behind Judas. Peter often got angry. He looks angry now, but he became more peaceful as the years went by. Peter heard about Jesus from his brother Andrew, who was with John the Baptist. He is sitting next to his brother, but it is hard to tell because of the way he is leaning in toward John. The 2 brothers look a lot alike. Peter's sign is the crossed keys and an upside-down cross. One time Jesus said to Peter that he was the rock on which Jesus would build the church. He then said that he gave Peter the keys to the kingdom. When Peter was old, he went to be with the Christian people in Rome. It was against the law to be a Christian person in those days, and the soldiers caught him. When they were going to nail him to a cross like Jesus, Peter asked the soldiers to turn him upside down. He did not deserve to die like his Lord, he said. The soldiers did as he asked, and old Peter died on the cross too, but upside down. Judas is the one who turned against Jesus. See, he is holding a bag with 30 pieces of silver in the painting. That is what he was paid to show the soldiers who Jesus was when they went to arrest him. I wonder what symbol would be best for Judas. Sometimes the sign for Judas is a shield that is all black. But I wonder, was there really no light in his life at all? Sometimes the sign for Judas also has 30 pieces of silver or a rope on it, because Judas hanged himself when he realized what he had done. Judas may have lost hope for himself, but I wonder if Jesus forgave him. Perhaps it's best to simply leave his shield blank. This is the sign for Matthias. He replaced Judas as one of the 12 and was killed for telling the story, so his symbol is a kind of sword and a book. On the other side of Jesus are Thomas, James, and Philip. This is Thomas. He is leaning behind James, so we see his face next to Jesus, even though James is really sitting next to Jesus. Thomas was the one who always asked hard questions. He is sometimes called Doubting Thomas. His sign is a spear and a builder's square. This is what a builder uses to make square corners on buildings. Thomas went to India to tell people the story of Jesus, so he began to build the church in that part of the world. He was killed in India for telling the story. This is James. He is really sitting next to Jesus. His brother John is on one side and he is on the other. He and his brother were fishermen like Peter and Andrew. They worked for their father Zebedee. James learned about Jesus from his brother John, who learned about him when he was a disciple of John the Baptist. The two brothers, John and James, together with Peter, made up an inner circle of 3 very close friends of Jesus inside the group of the 12. The 3 were there when Jesus was praying on the mountain and when he was praying in the garden, but I'm afraid they went to sleep 3 times in the garden. The sign for James is 3 shells. He was the first apostle to be killed. King Herod Agrippa the first had him executed. This is why a sword is also sometimes his symbol. Philip is next. He was there when Jesus fed the 5,000 people. They were hungry for the truth about life. The truth is that people need each other and need to love each other. To show this, Jesus shared a little bread and fish with them, and there was enough for all. It was kind of like a parable. His sign has 2 loaves of bread on it to remember that day when so many were fed so well. Now we will go back to the other side of the painting. Here there is a group of 3 people. They are Andrew, James the Less, and Bartholomew. Here is Andrew. We already know that he is Peter's brother. See how he is sitting near Peter? Andrew was one of John the Baptist's disciples, but when John the Baptist showed Jesus to him, he went to get his brother Peter, and they both followed Jesus. Both Andrew and Peter were fishermen. Many centuries ago, the people of Scotland liked Andrew so much that they made him the patron saint of Scotland. If you should ever go to Scotland, you will see his sign, the cross that looks like an X. He died on a cross that was this shape. James the Less is next. People called him the Less because he was younger or shorter than John's brother James. James the Less's sign is a saw. He was killed by a saw for telling the story of Jesus. Kings did not like to hear about following a king called Jesus, even though Jesus was a different kind of king. Finally, at the end of the table, we come to Bartholomew. His name means son of Ptolemy. He was told about Jesus by Philip, after Jesus told Philip to follow him. This is Bartholomew's sign. He was killed by knives for telling the story of Jesus by people who did not understand. At the other end of the table is the last group of three. They are Matthew, Jude, and Simon the Zealot. Here is Matthew. He was a tax collector from Capernaum until Jesus called him. Matthew followed Jesus and later wrote down the story of Jesus we call the Gospel of Matthew. It is the first book in the New Testament of the Bible. Here is Matthew's symbol. It has 3 money bags on it to help us remember that he was a hated tax collector before Jesus called him and Matthew found peace. This is Jude. His name also almost sounds like Judas. He may have written the next to last book in the New Testament of the Bible, which is a letter by Jude. His symbol is a ship sailing because he went across the sea to tell the story of Jesus. Here is Simon. He was a fighter for his people and for God's law, so he was called the Zealot. He was also a fisherman. The symbol of Simon is a fish and a book. The fish helps us to remember that he was a fisherman who became someone who fished for people to show them the truth about life. The book stands for the Bible. These are the 12, the apostles, and these are their symbols. Now, I wonder which one of the 12 you like best. I wonder which one was the most important. I wonder which one is most like you or where you are in this story. I wonder if we could leave out any of the 12 and still have all the story we need. Now it is time for you to get out your work, find some paper, some art supplies, and make a picture about this story. Thanks for coming. See you next time. Bye.